is so bad. You just gotta... Come on. Whoa!
Having spoken, the doomsayer defeated.
Why don't you get Billy dressed? I'll take him into town with me. Hit the store before it gets all bought out.
How'd you folks hold up in the storm?
Big insurance day.
Sorry to hear that.
What's going on? It's death.
Seek rescue.
Tie this around your waist.
Or four.
Let us know you got at least 300 feet.
There's nothing out there. Nothing in the mist.
What if you go?
It is time to take sides. Read the good book. It calls for blood.
The next one that we'll be covering today is The Mist. So The Mist, the story is set in a small town of Maine. So the Drayton family, and David Drayton is the protagonist, and he's like a commercial artist and a family man that is living with his wife, Steph, and son Billy. So the Draytons live on the banks of a lake, which is just outside the town. And then there is a severe storm. You will see in the beginning that David Drayton is drawing something as an artist, and then the severe storm comes in and it brings down the trees and cuts off power to all the houses or this whole neighborhood and the small town as well. So David ends up deciding the next day to go into the town of Bridgeton for supplies. He takes his son Billy and also happens to take his neighbor Brent. And Brent, in recent years, David and Brent have been involved in a legal dispute about the property line. But David puts aside their differences given the nature of the emergency. And Brent actually asks whether he can join them to go into the town for getting some supplies. And before leaving their home, a strange mist they observe is coming across the lake, and it's visible far away across the lake. And they wonder whether it has anything to do with the local military base that is also working on a project which is called as Project Arrowhead. Meanwhile, the three of them get into the truck and they end up going to the town. They want to get some supplies from the local supermarket. And as they shop inside the supermarket, which is running on a generator due to the storm damages, and the mist ends up rolling in very near to the superstore or engulfing the superstore itself. So it's sort of they are standing in a line, and it seems to trap them and several other people, townspeople inside the store. So as the group tries to understand what is happening, they quickly realize that the mist is filled with strange and deadly creatures which attack anyone who sort of can venture outside or dares to venture outside into the mist. So the narrative focuses on the dynamics within the supermarket, the small setting of a few people trapped into this very small space, a sort of claustrophobic space. It's a big supermarket, not so claustrophobic as well. So it's mainly like the panic that sets in. So there is an exploration of how alliances are formed, and some of the trapped individuals begin to propose weird things, essentially. And among the people trapped inside the superstore, and one of the person there is Mrs. Carmody, and she's a very religious zealot that gains a following, and she ends up declaring or proclaiming the mist to be a divine punishment and calling for human sacrifices way ahead before the creatures can come in and take somebody. She calls for sacrifices. So who would they sacrifice from inside the list of people? So that leads to different situations, and all these sacrifices are supposed to appease what she believes to be the wrath of God, and she's a very religious, zealous person. So as the conditions deteriorate, David and a group of others decide to make a desperate attempt to escape, hoping to find safety or at least a clear understanding of the phenomenon. So venture beyond the store. So the story builds to a tense climax. It goes through like this setting inside the superstore and exploring different themes of fear, humanity under duress, and the conflict between the rational and the irrational responses to the different crises. How everyone deals with sort of the crisis that can end up happening. And if something like a situation is thrown. And these are ordinary people, townspeople, and extraordinary circumstances that are thrown against them. So King's narrative creates a thick atmosphere of dread and sort of a claustrophobic setting within the supermarket, which becomes sort of a microcosm of a society facing an existential threat. It examines how people react differently under different sorts of stress, ranging from heroism to fanaticism. So the Mist concludes. I think I wouldn't give out the ending itself, but it's a very ambiguous thing. So even this narrative goes in a very ambiguous way, right? How each person, each character deals with a whole lot of how to handle these difficult situations, or when a crisis is thrown against people who are ordinary people. So it's sort of a journey that has to be experienced when you're reading the novel or even watching the movie. So it sort of is exploring kind of the survivor's fate and the true nature of Mist, what it means, and it's open to interpretation. So the unresolved conclusion adds to the story's unsettling impact. It will stick with you for a very long time, and it makes a memorable read, and also kind of instills that thought process within you of how do you handle and manage crisis, and that's all very important, right? And it's a memorable read among King's. Like he has a canon of horror works, and this is one of them, I would say. And it's been adapted well, and the film was also well received, and later a television series as well. And story has an enduring appeal, and it's a universal appeal, right? Like crisis happens anytime. People are facing crisis in some part of the world, somewhere, and how do you essentially end up handling the crisis itself? And that's the whole narrative, and that's what personally was a huge takeaway for me as the reader. So a very good novel and a movie.
By the power vested in me by the state of Maine, I hereby order you to serve 2 life sentences back to back, 1 for each of your victims. So be it.
I didn't, since you asked.
You gonna fit right in. I must admit, I didn't think much of Andy the first time I laid eyes on him. He had a quiet way about him, a walk and a talk that just wasn't normal around here.
There are places in the world that aren't made out of stone. There's something inside that they can't touch.
What are you talking about?
Hope.
Let me tell you something, my friend. Hope is a dangerous thing.
The next one we'll be discussing is Shawshank Redemption. And this was one among the 4 stories, sort of we can call a novella. There were 4 novellas in different seasons. That's the novel, and there were 4 of them. So Shawshank Redemption was one of them. And essentially, if people have watched, people surely should watch Shawshank Redemption. And if you have not watched it, you have missed a huge part of it's truly a human experience. And I would say go ahead, watch the movie as well as read this very short novella within these different seasons. And it's also released as part of Stephen Goes to the Movies, another novel where he has a collection of his most famous stories that have made into film adaptations. So Red is serving a life sentence in Shawshank State Prison for the murders of his wife, and there is also a friend and the friend's child that end up dying in this accident. So Red meets Andy Dufresne, and Andy is wrongfully convicted of murdering his wife and her lover. So Andy first approaches Red to request that Red grant him 2 things: a rock hammer Rockhammer, Red, and a poster of Rita Hayworth. And Red is a prison go-to guy. He can get anything. And since Red has been there for a while. So Andy becomes meanwhile involved in helping prison warden with the money laundering kind of operation which they operate from within the prison. And earlier Andy was in trouble in the prison, and then getting involved or helping with this money laundering operation kind of eased him his stay in the prison. So now Andy learns from another prisoner that someone else has confessed to the crime he's been convicted of, and the reason he is here in the prison. So Andy goes to the warden trying to get help from him in reopening the case. Meanwhile, the warden doesn't want to let Andy lose him, because then his money laundering operation will also be impacted. So Andy faces obstacles from contacting an outside lawyer, and meanwhile Red and Andy become better acquainted and almost friends. So Andy tells Red about a contingency plan with papers he has for a new identity and a key to the safe deposit that is hidden in an old stone wall marked by a particular black rock, which is very distinct from the ones in that place. So ultimately, in 1975, Andy ends up escaping from Shawshank prison, and they fail to recapture him. So the warden tears down the poster which Red had got for him of Rita Hayworth, and uncovers a hole in the wall where Andy had spent years chipping through with the hammer, and it finally led to a sewer pipe, and Andy has escaped from that sewer pipe, and that's how he escaped from prison. And meanwhile, time passes, and Red is paroled a couple of years later, and decides to find whether Andy was speaking the truth. He decides to go find the stone wall and the black rock, and he does find it, the place that Andy had described to him, and he finds an envelope that is containing money and a letter from Andy inviting Red to find him. And this is where Red decides to follow Andy, and full of hope, right? And he decides to cross the border, and with a lot of hope. So that's how this beautiful story was written, and it has a lot of humanistic theme when I personally read it, and it was truly deeply impacting story.
From the shadow of suspicion, far from the scene of any crime, Todd Bowden has discovered a secret.
Doc? I don't have anything to say to you, boy. You've no right to come here and say these lies about me.
I have your fingerprints. I have your photographs.
And experience.
To the whole world, I am a monster. And you have known about me all this time.
Between curiosity
and the next one again is from the different seasons, the apt Pupil. Oh, you have to really read this very short novella, and part of different seasons again, one of the 4 stories. Pupil, it follows the teenager Todd Bowden, who arrives at the doorstep of an elderly German person, Arthur Denker, and the elderly German is an immigrant, and Arthur Denker is Todd is accusing Arthur Denker of being a wanted Nazi war criminal, and actually his name is Kurt Desander, and initially Arthur Denker is denying it, but finally he accepts that in fact he is Kurt Desander, and he accepts that as his true identity. And Todd asks to hear detailed stories about his crime that he has committed during the Holocaust, and Todd is more interested as a teenager in the Holocaust itself. He's still in school. So, and he also threatens Desander, saying if Desander refuses his demands, Todd will turn him over to the authorities. So, Then Dussander agrees to tell him about the different stories of wartime and the Holocaust itself. So over the next few months, Todd visits Dussander daily under the pretext of reading to him, all the while badgering him to reveal more details of the atrocities that he has committed. So Todd soon forces Dussander to wear a replica of an SS Oberlieutenant uniform and march on command. So he's ordering Dussander to do various things. So Todd begins to have nightmares, and he's not doing good in school. So his grades slip, and also he starts forging the report cards before handing to the parents. And Todd eventually finds himself in danger of failing several courses. So meanwhile, the guidance counselor, Ed French, realizes that Todd has been doing this fake forgery of report cards. He requests an appointment with the Bowdens, the parents of Todd. And Todd and Dussander kind of come up with a ruse where Dussander poses as Todd's grandfather. So Dussander falsely claims that Todd's grades are a result of problem at home and promises improvement. So then Ed French notices Todd's grandfather does not mention him by name. So Dussander meanwhile is trying to improve Todd. So he blackmails Todd into spending his visit studying and trying to make Todd improve on his schoolwork. So now Todd feels that he no longer has any use for Dussander, and he wants to kill him and make it look like an accident. And this is where both Todd and Dussander kind of lie to each other, and they say they have stored evidences in safe places, and in case something should happen to either one of them, the reality of both of them will be disclosed out to the world. So, but both Dussander and Todd are bluffing each other that they have these evidences packed away somewhere safely and for release in case something happens to them. So in the midst of all this bluffing over the next few months, Todd murders several vagrant homeless people and finds that committing murder helps him with his nightmares that he's been facing. So, listening from Dussander about the Holocaust, atrocities, now Todd has become more like this vicious, evil person. So when circumstances do not allow him to continue his killings, he picks a kind of a concealed spot overlooking the freeway and aims at people in passing cars with sort of his hunting rifle. So Dussander, meanwhile, is suffering from his own nightmares and also has taken to killing the homeless people and burying the bodies in his basement. So despite sort of the link between them, Dussander and Todd are not telling each other that they have been doing these killings of the people, and they are going about on their own doing these killings and murders. So during one of his killings, Dussander has a heart attack and calls Todd to hide the evidence. So at the hospital, again, Dussander has a roommate who recognizes, who is a survivor. So circumstances that kind of weave and come together to haunt you, right? So that's what happens. And basically, Dussander is visited in his hospital room by Israeli Nazi hunter as well. So realizing that he's about to be caught and too sick to flee and start over, Dussander ends up committing suicide. The police and the Israeli person are suspicious of Todd. So when Todd realizes that police are closing in on him, he takes a rifle and goes on a shooting spree, and eventually he also gets killed by the police. So that's a beautiful, beautiful movie that you have to go watch and go and read. It's not important about how this narrative is going, but the beautiful, beautiful narration that you will get from King is what the main reason should be that you would go and read. Even despite hearing this, right, there is so many things you can pick up when you read the apt Pupil from different seasons. So please go ahead and do that reading and also watching the movie. Amazing, amazing movie.
There you go. She's all ready, Captain.
Thanks, Billy.
connected by the sewers. That's where it lives.
So the next one, again, who hasn't seen it? And, it basically is the story which is an epic about childhood trauma, friendship, and overcoming fears. Right? It's a tale of an ancient evil that starts out in the small town of Derry, Maine, and central to the narrative is the creature known as It, which primarily manifests as Pennywise, the dancing clown. This entity has the ability to shapeshift and appear in forms that the victims fear the most, emerging every 27 years to prey on the town's children. So the novel is structured around two alternating timelines. The first timeline is 1957 to 58 and follows a group of 7 children, self-named the Losers Club. And the members come together through shared experiences of social exclusion and personal traumas, both at home and school. And each child has a terrifying encounter with Pennywise, leading them to band together to confront and seemingly defeat the monster. So the second timeline is set in 1985, which is now these are adult members who have moved away from Derry and forgotten much of their childhood 27 years later, right? And they are drawn back to Derry by a promise they made as children to return and kill it if it ever resurfaced. So as adults, they grapple with sort of the remnants of their childhood trauma, the past trauma, and and essentially the reality that it is still alive and still deadly to the same kind of effects. And this return to Derry forces them to confront not only it, but also the impact of their childhood experiences that has had on their adult lives. So it explores deep, dark themes of horror, and it itself, like if you read and you watch the movie, it's more about childhood friendship and many themes explored here, right? So I would certainly encourage the readers to go and read this. So that's it for today, and till next time with another author and some of their novels. Bye for now.